Chapter 15. I ripped into my steak and eggs with more than my wonted post-performance gusto. Keith's close physical proximity, so large and lovely across the booth from me, raised my metabolic rate like 2 hours of aerobics. He sipped his Sanka. We made small talk. You must be very excited, he said. Matter of fact, I was. What about? About Marcia Goldman and the TV show and all. Oh, that. No, not really. This town is chock full of people who fancy themselves managers, almost as many as fancy themselves performers. If I had a dime for every bozo who sashayed up to me after a show, handing me some line about connections in this business, I could quit my day job. I doubt we'll ever hear from that diminutive Miss Goldman again. Do I detect a trace of cynicism in your voice? No, not cynicism exactly, just the working knowledge that show business is where bullshit was invented, probably by someone a lot like Marcia Goldman. I chomped off a bite of whole wheat toast. Have you always wanted to be a singer? Keith asked. Oh my, yes. A singer, a dancer, a movie star, a show business institution, that sort of thing, ever since I was so high. No, really. Yes, really. You've heard of stage mothers? I was a stage child. I used to beg my mother to push me into show business. When they asked us in school what we wanted to be when we grew up, among all those firemen and ballerinas and nurses and astronauts, I was the only kid in the entire third grade who wanted to be a legend. He laughed. I liked it. My first real ambition was to be a Mouseketeer. I figured, how long could Cubby O'Brien last? I used to study those shows. I'd memorize all the songs and dances. I still know them. Well, then I told my mother about it. Clara said to me, Boy, ain't no colored Mouseketeers. Clara is a woman cursed with limited vision. She didn't even bother to tell me I was watching 5-year-old reruns. But enough about me. For a few minutes, anyways. What about you? What did you want to be? A football star, he answered, eyes lowered in a boyish gesture of embarrassment. So what's so outlandish? Now I don't know from football, but you sure look like quarterback or halfback or something back material to me. I was a running back at St. Fletcher's in Minnesota. So why didn't you go pro? Because I was a lousy running back at St. Fletcher's in Minnesota. No, you weren't. Yes, he insisted. I was. I was 6'2" and 220, and at St. Fletcher's that's enough. Ability was preferred but not really necessary. I spent 2 years weighing a groove in the bench. My illustrious football career ended at graduation. He smiled the sort of smile people tend to wear when discussing dreams bludgeoned to death with the heavy, blunt object of reality. I had the sudden impulse to touch Keith's cheek, oh so softly, with my fingertips, and say something sexy but supportive. Something Ann Sheridan might say, like, Don't worry, big fella, you can cross my line of scrimmage any time. What I said was, You seem to have kept in good shape since college. I thought that was an appropriate remark, vaguely complimentary, but much less obvious than, say, Jiminy Christmas, you are ever a hunk. Thanks, I try to keep in shape. In shape, he says. In shape. Michelangelo's David should be in such shape. I try to get to the gym 3 times a week, he continued. I work out at Gold's Gym. Work out with the big boys, do we? I'm impressed. Oh yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger actually spoke to me last week. He looked right at me and said, You finished with those dumbbells? Big guy makes me look like a ballerina. You look like you work out some yourself. I was so glad he noticed. Oh, nothing serious, just 25 minutes of Nautilus 3 times a week. Seems to do the job, he said, smiling a dangerous smile. I was becoming decidedly warm under the collar. I drew a ragged breath and said, So, what do you, do, like, for a living? I'm in banking. I manage the downtown regional branch of First California. I make sure everything at the branch runs as smoothly as possible, and that all the money we start out with at 9 o'clock is accounted for at 5 o'clock. Hardly a barrel of laughs, but it pays the bills. Exciting, huh? Hey, I'm a secretary myself. I slave over a hot typewriter by day, so that I may sing my way into the hearts of hundreds at night. You're kidding. Believe me, being a secretary is no joke. Wow, it's hard to believe that someone with your talent has to type for a living. Funny, that's what I keep saying at work. Well, at least you have the satisfaction of knowing you're going to be a household word someday. Sure, I said. Like spatula. Right now, I'm just a secretary with a rather unusual nightlife. But hey, that's showbiz, or so they tell me. There was a momentary lull in the conversation, during which I attacked my breakfast with renewed fervor. I could feel Keith watching in what could easily pass for fascination as I mopped up egg yolk with a corner of toast. I looked up quickly, catching him in the act of watching me. He just smiled. What was the story on this dude, I wondered. I could swear the guy wanted me. I could practically smell it on his breath. And yet, there was Betsy, Miss Edelweiss of 1978. Could it be that she was just a front? Could it be he was pulling a fast one on her? Or maybe our fair-haired boy was a switch hitter? Or maybe I was dead ass wrong and he was just a friendly Joe with an affinity for truly fine pop vocals. After all, a sudden insecure inner voice decided to ask, what would this 6-foot Aryan hunk want with the likes of me? What gives here anyways? I decided to find out. May I ask you a personal question? I asked. Keith leaned back in the booth, crossing his beefy arms. Ask. How would you describe your relationship with Betsy? He didn't miss a beat. How would you describe your relationship with the busboy Tom Sawyers? Touché. I decided to step back a couple of paces and try another angle. Then I assume you know I'm gay. You know, he said, I've never really liked that term. Gay. I think we've rendered a perfectly good word useless. Don't be evasive. Well, you know, I usually don't like to take that kind of thing for granted. However, after your show last night, when I couldn't help but notice you kissing the busboy, your pianist, and half the audience, I rather assumed. Well, you know, I usually don't like to take that kind of thing for granted. However, after your show last night, when I couldn't help but notice you kissing the busboy, your pianist, and half the audience, I rather assumed, he shrugged. And it doesn't bother you, my being gay, I mean? Why should it bother me? This Keith Keller was proving himself a master of the sidestep. I was in no mood to dance. And are you gay? He paused. He looked up at the ceiling like a schoolboy searching for the correct spelling of the word neighbor. Nope, he finally said. You're sure? Sure. Then are you bisexual? You have this thing about labels, don't you? It was rather like playing ping pong with a pimento stuffed olive. I decided to go for a slam shot. Look here, are you after my black ass or what? He looked not the least taken aback, one nearly invisible eyebrow lifted. The smile widened. He paused a moment before answering. Why, yes, matter of fact I am. Oh, my ears and whiskers. He was after my black ass. My heart rate and breathing instantly accelerated to the point where I was afraid I might hyperventilate and faint dead away, falling face first into my egg yolk encrusted plate. What about your girlfriend? I managed to gasp. Well, I don't think she's after your black ass, he replied with a little smile. You know what I mean. This was no time to toy with me. Besides, he continued, far as I can see, you're not black at all. You're brown. Keith. Approximately the color of coffee with coffee made, I'd say. Keith. Yes, angelic choir boy look. I spoke as quietly and calmly as I could under the circumstances. You have this girlfriend. Oh, at least one. And you have not 30 seconds ago admitted to wanting my, shall we say, derrière noir. Oui. Then I suppose it's safe to assume that you are bisexual. He shrugged. Let's just say that I've always enjoyed having my cake and eating it too, so to speak. Or as James Dean once put it, I'm certainly not going through life with one hand tied behind my back. You look skeptical. That's because I was skeptical. Much as I hated to admit it, even to myself, I couldn't shake the nagging notion that any man who calls himself a bisexual was actually just a garden variety homosexual afraid of going the whole hog. A person not entirely honest or at ease with himself or the world at large. A perennial straddler of the fence. It was a popular misconception at the time. I was young. What did I know? I kept it to myself. It's just that you're my first real live bisexual. I mean, I've read about them and all, but everybody I've ever known has either been straight or gay. You know, like that old song, Gotta Be This or That. Not me. I'm 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. He smiled at his own joke. It's really very simple, Johnny Ray. I find women beautiful, and I find men beautiful. I like sex with women, and I like it with men. I've also loved a few people in 25 years of life. Some of these people have been women, and some of them have been men. I've never seen any reason to question it. And until pushed up against the wall by pop singers and coffee shops, I see no good reason to call myself anything. I'm just me. How nice for you, I said, and though it probably came out sounding snotty and facetious, I meant it. I've always wished were nearer the center of the Kinsey scale. 1 through 6, where 1 is totally and completely heterosexual and 6 is full on faggot flambe, I'm about 5.7. I masturbated with the Playboy centerfold in one hand once in high school. I mean, whether or not bisexuality, as Woody Allen once asserted, truly affords one twice the chances for a date on Saturday night, how could it not make life more interesting by roughly 50%? If nothing else, I would imagine, there's probably always something nice to look at. Still, one more thing bothered me. May I ask you a personal question? Another one? You don't have to answer it. Damn right I don't. Go ahead. Does your girlfriend know about the men I mean? Betsy? What's for her to know? We're not engaged or anything. We're not even pinned. And as I've mentioned, we seem to be on the rocks. Besides, I don't talk to her about the other women. The other women. Why tell her about the men? He leaned in closer. Could we talk about something else now? Like what? Like the part about my being after your derriere noir. Like you've got the prettiest almond-shaped eyes I've ever seen. Like the constant erection I've maintained just watching you eat your toast. He smiled a boyishly mischievous smile. I signaled for the check.